Sonic Lost World is a game that I had quite a unique history with. Coming in, I really wanted to like it. This game looked so unique and interesting, and then I played it. I really wasn't enjoying myself. I thought the level design was pretty bad, and before playing this, I already didn't like the story. So, I hated Sonic Lost World. After a while, I decided to give it a second chance. After all, it is a Sonic game. There's bound to be some learning curve to it. However, despite my thoughts changing a little bit, overall, I was still very dissatisfied with the overall experience. So, why is that? Why do I have such a hard time trying to enjoy this game? Well, without any further ado, let's get started. Let's start with a bit of a history lesson. I promise this won't be too long. I know it's gonna be kinda boring. So, after celebrating the history of the franchise with Sonic Generations, Takashi Iizuka hoped to deliver a new experience with Sonic Lost World. They experimented with tube-shaped levels, which are mainly inspired by Jack and the Beanstalk. Development ultimately focused on the Wii U and 3DS because of the success of previous Sonic games on Nintendo platforms, and also because Sega had a deal with Nintendo where they would make 3 Sonic games exclusively for Nintendo platform, and you know how well that turned out. Sonic Lost World eventually released in October of 2013, and people were mixed on it. Some people really like it, some really hate it, but the general consensus is that this game is meh. And as the years have gone by, the general consensus for this game still hasn't really changed. However, what do I think of it? Well, let's find out, and as usual, let's talk about the story first. So, this game starts off with a scene of Sonic chasing Eggman to rescue some animals, and then they crash into this thing called the Lost Axe, which Tails miraculously knows about. I would go more in depth, but that's all the fanfare the game gives it, so if the game doesn't care, why should I? Even in gameplay, it really doesn't explore the lore of the world very well, if at all. Like, in one scene, you're literally in the middle of a black room with lights, and then you go play a beach level. Or how in one level, you're in the desert, the next one, you're in the middle of a honeycomb in the sky, or streets of honeycombs, I guess. And then in the next one, you're in the middle of a donut land with cakes floating all over the place. Like, what? What? After some encounters with the Deadly Six, Sonic took away the magic conch from Eggman, which he is clearly using to control the Deadly Six, by the way. Anyways, they ended up having to work together, and for some reason Tails is having a hard time accepting this, even though he is fine with this in other games. But anyways, Tails later ended up having to, I guess, sacrifice himself to save Sonic from entering this fake capsule. Anyways, after some stupid line, it is later revealed that the Deadly Six are planning to turn Tails into a robot, and literally in the same cutscene, it is revealed that Tails is actually fine, and you don't need to worry about anything, thus removing all tension from the story. Alright, let's stop with the summary bit right there, since, well, there's still more of the story after this. It's just the ending, and I feel like I should discuss the story in more depth now. What I just did was summarizing most of the story, and well, that was not the initial plan. I just feel like this is the most organized way I can talk about the story. So, let's start with some of the few, let's just say, questionable writing decisions. First of all, let's talk about the character for a little bit. So, starting with Sonic, this is the game that really makes him irritating. Sonic is just very unlikable in this game. Throwing away the magic conch from Eggman when it was obvious that he was using it to control the Zeddies, or of course the painfully obnoxious line. This game indeed is the game that has the worst line out of all the Sonic games in history. At least in my opinion, and I get it. Sonic has an attitude, he says some stupid stuff, and you know, all that stuff that has always been a part of Sonic's character. However, the problem is that, like I mentioned in my Sonic Colors review, that game and this game just take it to the absolute extreme. And maybe I would tolerate it a little more if the lines are tolerable, but these are some of the cringiest lines in the entire franchise that it makes lines like this look amazing. And once again, I know that cheesy lines have always been a part of the franchise, but again, this game just went too overboard. Alright, so what about Tails? Well, let's just say that the writing of this character ain't the best. Okay, cat's out of the bag, Tails here is terrible. I already talked about how Tails just turned into a useless and unlikable character, but now, he's just straight up a pretentious jerk. Like, this is character assassination 101. I don't feel the need to go in depth on Eggman since he's basically the same as in colors. So with that said, let's just get into the Deadly Six. Alright, so I'm just gonna pull out the oh so iconic line. What were they thinking? These characters are such one-dimensional stereotypes, it hurts to watch. Zaz is this goofball who I can't really buy either as a joke nor a villain. As a joke character, well, he's never funny. The jokes here are just stupid one-liners that I'd hardly consider a joke. And the other Deadly Six, well, they're not much better. Zomom is the fat one, Master Zik is the old master guy, I guess. Xena is the girl, Zor is the emo loner, and yeah, these characters are just stereotypes. Barely any personality, nothing unique about them, they're just stereotypes disguised as characters. Nothing more, nothing less. But there is one other Deadly Six character that I specifically want to talk about. The one that Sega or Sonic Team or whatever have consistently tried to bring back to the franchise. The one that I guess has a bit more pizzazz with this character. I am of course talking about Zavok. Now, what is it that makes Zavok so unique when compared to the other Deadly Six? Why do Sega think it's worth bringing him back at every opportunity imaginable? To be honest, I don't really know the answer. While yes, he is a bit more than just a stereotype, there's still barely any personality in his character other than just being evil, I guess. And he's really just not entertaining to watch, as despite the game trying to send the message that Zavok is threatening, it really never works. Oh, and also, speaking of later appearances of Zavok, there are some pretty big continuity errors, but that's not the focus of today's video. So, moving on. I guess there's one thing that they added in to try to make the Deadly Six more threatening, and that is the plot about Eggman's machine being controlled by the Deadly Six, and it's now sucking up all the energy of wherever this is, since this game hates continuity with past games. But this really doesn't work because you're not really given a reason to care. What do I mean by this? Shouldn't we care about the fact that Sonic's home is gonna be gone? Well, here's the problem. The game pays very little attention to this plot point, and thus, I'd hardly call it a mistake. It's just another plot point that they barely paid any attention to. And so, for most of the game, I just forget that it's even a thing. Alright, I think that about covers the story aside from the ending. So, let's just jump into the presentation. For reasons that you'll understand soon, let's talk about the graphics. The Wii U runs at 720p, while the PC version, which I'm playing for the video, runs at 1080p. Both versions run at 60 FPS, so yeah. The PC version looks better, but the Wii U version looks decent for Wii U standards. The draw distance isn't the best, however it's not really intrusive. However, I noticed the lack of options for the PC version, like the only option here is resolution, and for 2015, I expect better. There's no option for VSync or anti-aliasing, which is just odd to me. Still, despite the shortcomings, the game still looks pretty good overall, at least in the technical sense. And while we're at it, let's talk about more differences between the Wii U and PC version. In the case of the Wisp, the PC version uses traditional controls, while the Wii U version uses gamepad gimmicks that feel awful to play. Let me make something clear, I'm not against gamepad gimmicks, they're just not utilized well in this case. I know I was supposed to talk about the presentation now, but screw it, I've got a better segue for the controls now. Let's talk about the moves that Sonic can do. This is an aspect of Sonic Lost World that is quite divisive, to say the least. Some people like the amount of cool moves that Sonic can pull off in this game, while others find it to be too complicated, and a far cry from the one-button control of the Genesis games. How do I feel about this? Well, it's just like one word I said in the last sentence: complicated. Let's start with the spin dash, and I must say, I really like it. I think it feels great to master it as you can continuously do it. So, if you want to go as fast as possible and keep the momentum going, you have to be careful and avoid a lot of obstacles while at high speed. That said, how about the other moves? Well, I can't say I'm impressed. Let's continue to talk about the new moves with the kick and charge homing attack. And yeah, I don't really like them. These moves just serve to overcomplicate something simple. Now, I'm not against adding more depth to existing mechanic. If done well, it can be a worldwide addition to the franchise. The problem here is that I just feel like they don't add any depth, or should I say, they add fake depth. Let me show you what I mean. This is a crab meat. It's a classic badnik from the classic Sonic games. And trust me, we'll get to the whole nostalgia thing in a later video. Back to the point. In previous games, you just jump into it and bam, it's done. Here, nah man, you gotta kick it first. And there's like no indication of it. Like, there's seriously no indication about this. So you just have to know beforehand that you need to kick it to destroy it. Like, seriously. There's only one enemy that can base this well, which is the bear which fires bomb. You can't homing attack on the bear directly, and attacking the bomb is obviously suicide, so of course, you need to kick it. Why is this type of enemy design so rare? Why is it for every other enemy you just have to hope that a homing attack can get the job done? Actually, that's another big problem in this game, the lack of communication. Let's get back to the spin dash for a second. While I do think it's a unique interpretation of the spin dash, this game did a terrible job telling you about it. Unless you look at a specific hint in Windy Hill, which you can easily miss by the way, or just know beforehand from the internet like me, you will never know that you can do the infinite spin dash. I don't have a problem with explaining game mechanics through hints. However, I feel like the player should also be able to organically learn them from gameplay. Or at the very least, give the player a button prompt in the levels so the player will know that it's possible. Of course, after talking about the moves and mechanics, it only makes sense to talk about the Wisp. And I must say, out of all the Wisp renditions that I've played, this one's probably the worst. Like, none of the Wisps are fun to use. Fortunately, most of the time you can just skip them, and that's what I do. They're just plainly not fun to use since they're finicky, lame, and just overall awkward to use. I don't really feel like going in depth on them since they are essentially just glorified gamepad gimmicks. Alright, I see that miraculously our transitions have been pretty good so far, so let's ruin that by talking about the level design. And man oh man, am I gonna go full on complaining mode here. Let's start this positively. The first zone, Windy Hill, actually isn't bad. Outside of the laughably terrible boss, I really do think it's a solid level. The platforming here is really fun while not being too hard. Not the greatest first level ever since it doesn't really do a good job of teaching some of the game's mechanic as I stated earlier, but that's more of the fault of the mechanics rather than the level design. On its own, Windy Hill remains a fun level with fun but not spectacular level design. With fun platforming and not much in terms of speed, but it's there. And also with cool set pieces. Although this brings me to the discussion of the graphics, specifically the art style. Out of all the attempts of modern Sonic trying to mimic the classic art style, this is definitely one of the worst. Like, it's not Sonic 4 level of bad, but man, it does not look good. I want to preface this by saying that the game's graphics overall is fine. It's good. Sonic's character model looks fine, the background looks fine, mostly. And overall, it's not bad. However, in terms of the whole classic Sonic art style thing, it just looks off. This is of course exacerbated with the whole classic Sonic spam thing, but even without that, this game's art style just doesn't look that good. Like these Minecraft trees, these plastic looking badniks, these pixelated looking grass, it all just looks abysmal. Like I said, this game overall looks fine, but all of these decisions are very questionable to say the least. But with all that said, let's discuss the level design for the rest of the game. But before that, of course, I can't skip out on the amazing soundtrack. From Frozen Factory, the Windy Hill, the Sky Road, it's all great stuff. Not only do they fit the stage very well, but they're also pretty catchy. The soundtrack perfects atmosphere and catchiness. Alright, continuing with the level design talk, we have Desert Ruins, and man oh man is this the epitome of a mixed bag. Act 1 is not bad, it's fine, it's enjoyable enough. Act 2, however, is just boring. There's literally nothing fun about it. It's a max speed section, I guess. Yeah, I remember the last time Sonic had that. In all seriousness, I don't think that the idea of max speed section is bad or anything. I just don't think there has been a good one yet. Officially at least. But yeah, Desert Ruin Act 2 is just lame. There's no exciting platforming, no unique set pieces, and the boss is awful as always. Anyways, Desert Ruins Act 3 is actually pretty good. Granted, I don't really like the art direction here, as it has the whole art direction problem, the flawed world building, and the whole Mario-like problem, which we'll talk about in a later video. But overall, it's a fun time. But that brings us to Desert Ruins Act 4, and oh my lord, this has got to be one of the most boring levels in Sonic history. To start off, this stage is an auto-scroller, and almost every single auto-scroller level I've played is bad. It's not fun, it's slow, it blocks down the pace, and it slows you down. And you might realize that all of that is detrimental to Sonic's core design. Alright, I don't really feel the need to discuss every single act one by one for the rest of the game, so let's just continue with Tropical Coast. As a whole, this zone is relatively mediocre. I mean, what's so fun about guiding fruits and these basic platforming sections with no thrill? Or how about multiple pathways that offer nothing different from the other ones, since this stage is so automated? And that's basically all I have to say for this zone, so moving on. Frozen Factory is where the bad stuff really starts to emerge. From the ice physics to the blandest whole get out level design, Act 4 was frustrating, and that would be bad enough, but then Act 2 came along, and it is by far one of the worst levels I've ever had the pleasure of playing in a platformer. And trust me when I say that I've played some really bad stuff in the past. First of all, the control for the snowball is absolutely awful. You can barely stop, moving is clunky, and the jump just feels off. I guess it is realistic, but overall it just does not feel good and should have never been in the game in the first place. But then, there's the level design itself. This level expects you to pull off some jumps that are just way too precise for this terrible control. It is suspended over a large bottomless pit and some sharp turns that are just, again, too much for this control. Silent Forest and Sky Road actually managed to do something very interesting. Usually in games I don't like, the problem is usually that either they're boring or frustrating. But these two zones just do a Mega Man X7 and combine them both to create some of the worst stages in Sonic history. And I mean it. I mean, block in uninteresting platforming? Check. Doubt that you can't see coming or can't react accordingly in a reasonable amount of time? Check. Generally questionable level design decisions, like this poison mud thing and Silent Forest Act 1. Check. Like, I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but thankfully we're almost done here. So, Lava Mountain. I don't really have much to say here, considering that it's just more of the same frustrating stuff from the last two zones. It's not as boring. Well, the platforming stages anyways, the bosses are just pretty lame. And I realize that I haven't talked much about the bosses at all. However, they all have been memed to death and I don't have much interest in talking about them when the footage speaks for itself. And the final boss is literally just the exact same as in colors, which is something that I don't like. However, that means that I don't have to spend time talking about it in this video, considering that, well, I already did in the Colors review. So, the ending. Well, Sonic saves the day. Eggman betrays Sonic, of course. Oh yeah, Eggman fakes his death at one point. And then just Tails just... Oh my god, this ending is just so bad. So, yeah, I guess the hero saved the day. Alright, conclusion time. And I'm not the best at this, but yeah, that was my thoughts on Sonic Lost World. A game that I wanted to like, but just can't. I don't like the art style, I don't like the direction, I hate the story, and most important of all, I just don't like the game. But yeah, I think that about covers my little thoughts on this game. In the next video, we'll be discussing the final game of this little retrospective. I'll see you then.